Welcome back to another episode of the Get Back Coach. Starting this episode off a little bit differently than we normally do. Obviously, Apollo, based out of Texas. I myself am based out of Texas. Had the privilege to be in Seguin, Texas this weekend. But the reason I wanted to talk about this specifically is if you haven't already seen it, Texas, Central Texas, in particular, Kerr County was hit with some really heavy flooding, just devastating for Central Texas. And before we dive into the show, just wanted to bring that up and let folks know if you are called to help. The Kerr County Relief Fund is accepting donations. We really encourage anybody that can to try to help out and make a difference. Obviously, again, our thoughts are with the families that were affected by just the tragedy in Texas. And again, this is a place that I call home. A lot of families were devastated, and I think we all have a duty to make as much of a difference as we can in those communities that have been hit with this storm. So again, if you have the means, if you have the ability, please give to the Kerr County Flood Relief Fund, help out some of those folks who really need it. But with that being said, let's get into the show, Jake, and I'll let you lead us off.
Yeah, we forgot about something last week, Jay. In the mix of conference realignment, we forgot that Northern Illinois is leaving the MAC and heading to the Mountain West, which, again, terrible for regionality. And I think you and I are on the same page of this is a terrible move for college football. But again, it's a business, and this is strictly a business decision for Northern Illinois, where I can't blame them too much, because looking at the numbers here, Jay, MAC teams were getting $833,000, okay, for athletics. They would now get $3.5 million to make that jump to the Mountain West. It sucks, but I can't blame them.
Yeah, and like, again, what you said, we really enjoy the regionality of college football. I think the Sun Belt and the MAC are two of our favorite conferences to watch for that reason, because it feels like every single game there's a little bit of an impact when you're playing somebody that's not too far down the road.
Exactly.
And with this change, yes, NIU gets more money, but you have to wonder how it's going to impact them in other sports. I don't think they're a full Mountain West member. Like, I think they're going to be in another conference for like the Olympic sports, things like that. But it does hurt to see NIU go to the Mountain West from a football standpoint. And think about, like, you got the Bronze Stalk with Ball State. There's some rivalry games that are kind of going away for Northern Illinois now with this decision. And again, we always would prefer to have schools that are regionally close to each other remain linked and be in a conference together.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this is a business at the end of the day. Sadly, it can't just be about the product on the field. But yeah, it stinks for the MAC. And like you said, a lot of those rivalries in Northern Illinois are now going to go away, because I don't think the MAC will schedule games in Northern Illinois now. They're going to thumb their nose, say, "Hey, you want to leave? All right, fine. Yeah. We ain't playing. We're not going to allow you to play close to here."
And maybe those wounds heal at some point, but it does feel like a loss again. Like Bronze Stalk, really cool trophy.
Yeah,
but
awesome.
I mean, it is what it is.
Yep. Now, to the meat and the potatoes of the episode, what we're going to be focusing on today: new coaching hires in the FBS. And Jay, we don't just talk about the power conferences either, okay? Every single new coach hire will be discussed on today's podcast. And we are going to start off with the SEC. Oh, wait a second, Jay. There are no SEC head coaching changes this year. Every single head coach in the SEC kept his job going into 2025. So to kind of replace that, Jay, who are some coaches that you believe might not make it out of the season? So who has some of the hottest seats in the SEC?
Yeah, I think one of the hottest seats in the SEC for me is Oklahoma with Brent Venables.
Mhm.
Uh, you look at just the performance that he's had so far there, hasn't really lived up to the standards. Obviously, you come into the SEC, you want to perform a little bit better, and it just hasn't been there for OU. Uh, the other piece of it is the big news today from Oklahoma, from Norman, is Joe Castelloni, like that has been there for forever, for a long time. AD is retiring. And so you put those two together. If Brent Venables has another sub Oklahoma standard season
Mhm.
uh, with a new AD coming in, you have to think that AD is going to want to move quickly to kind of cement himself, because that head coaching hire for football is going to be a flagship decision for him. It's going
Right.
to determine whether he's successful or not as the AD in Norman. So I think Brent Venables is very high up as far as the possible hot seats in the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, Venables, he's he's just not living up to that Oklahoma standard. And with an AD gone, because here's the thing, Jay, and I know you know this, you need to have alignment from top to bottom to have a successful football program. So if the athletic director comes in and he has a vision and Venables isn't a part of that vision, he's going to get one of his guys in there that he can work well with, because he wants to make that splash hire to right the ship of Oklahoma football. And if him and Venables aren't on the same page, along with the losing season, or not losing seasons, but average seasons Oklahoma has been putting up, it's not going to last very long.
No, it won't. And the other thing to think about is Oklahoma has been part of like the Bob Stoops coaching tree for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Because you got to remember Lincoln Riley's there as an offensive coordinator.
Right.
Brent Venables was a defensive coordinator for a long time in OU before he left for the Clemson job.
Right.
And I think you look at that and you consider, well, obviously there's a lot of ties to Josie, the athletic director. Whoever comes in is not going to have those Stoops ties,
Right.
or at least isn't likely to have as much of a tie to Bob Stoops as, Castelloni has previously. So I think all of that is just kind of a perfect storm for Brent Venables to really be on the hot seat this year.
Yeah. Yep. I have two, Jay. I really think Mark Stoops, if he has another year like he did last year, is probably going to be on his way out of Kentucky. Kentucky under Mark Stoops was doing very well. Like, for Kentucky football standards, they were doing well. And last season, actually going back, they kind of plateaued at that 7 to 8 win range. And then last year they had a terrible season, and now they don't have a whole lot of guys coming back. It kind of seems like one of those lame duck years where the inevitable is going to happen. They're going to have another 6-win season, maybe at most. And Mark Stoops is probably going to be on his way out if they don't do something drastic.
Yeah. And you look at what they brought in this year. Obviously, A&M fans will remember Zach Calzada from his time in College Station, then transferred to Auburn, then to Incarnate Word, now back in the SEC at Kentucky. It'll be interesting to see just kind of how he does this year. Obviously, getting back to a higher level of competition, going to be something to monitor for sure. And I don't disagree with you at all. I do think that, with Mark Stoops kind of plateauing, obviously Kentucky doesn't have as rich a history in college football as they do in basketball. But I do think there's some general discontentment there in Big Blue Nation, looking at what they have and what they would like to be, especially as the SEC just continues to get more competitive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And again, I want to stress too, Mark Stoops did a good job at Kentucky. Like him, if they let him go, it's not that he did a bad job. It's just that things kind of got stale, and now you're trending downward instead of trending up. So it's nature of the beast. Yeah.
Yeah, not much to add on there. It's just a situation we're going to be monitoring. And Jake, you said you had two, so I'll let you get into the second one.
I have one more. Billy Napier at Florida. Again, not having seasons that are up to that Florida standard. I think he needs 9 wins. I think 9 wins will keep him safe to show. Again, you talk about trajectory, Kentucky trending down. They're probably going to cut ties with Stoops, even though he did a good job in the beginning. Billy Napier did not do well in the beginning, but he gets to 9-3. Now you're showing improvement, and now they might give him some more time to work. I kind of like Florida coming into this year, not as a national title contender or a playoff team, but I do think that they're going to trend upward. But if it goes south early, we're going to be seeing new leadership in Gainesville.
Yeah, and you got to remember how tough the season was for Florida last year. They had a lot of really challenging games to kick off the season. Things were not easy for Florida. And then you also look at the quarterback situation, which seems to have improved a lot with DJ Lagway really coming along towards the end of the season. And I think Florida does have a chance to kind of make sure that Napier does keep his job. Again, never easy when you're in one of these power conferences like the Big Ten or the SEC, but definitely a chance for Florida to improve on what they did last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's move on to the Big Ten. Okay, an actual new head coaching hire. Let's start off with Barry Odom, new head coach of the Purdue Boilermakers. Odom comes from UNLV, and Jay, he kind of reignited the UNLV Rebels a little bit. They had some a couple decent years there. I like this hire. He was 19-8 at UNLV. Listen, Purdue is not looking to be national title contenders. They are not looking to be Big Ten championship contenders. Purdue is looking to win 8 games and win bowl games. That's what Purdue wants to do. And they were doing that under Jeff Brom. And I'm not saying Barry Odom and Jeff Brom are the same person, but I think the qualities I see in Barry Odom, they had some success with Jeff Brom in the past. So I like this hire. I don't know how good Purdue is going to be. They transfer in a lot of guys. Jay, only one returning starter comes back for Purdue. One, and it's Maccabee. But they have a lot of transfers. So again, it might be rough to start, but I like this hire.
Yeah, I like this hire as well. One guy that didn't make the journey with Barry Odom to Purdue is a guy that got his own head coaching job. Bryn Marion was the offense coordinator at UNLV. Obviously, the go-go offense, a lot of fun. May talk about that a little bit later in the episode. But I do think this is a good hire. And Barry Odom, I think, he had previous Power 5 coaching experience or Power 4 coaching experience at Mizzou. I thought he did well at Arkansas when he became a defensive coordinator there. Obviously was good as a defensive coordinator in Missouri before he got the head coaching job. Right. And I think he's probably learned some stuff. And, I think going to UNLV, the situations that he was in there has only gotten better as a head coach. So I think this is a pretty solid hire for what Purdue is trying to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. And look at that. That was the only Big Ten hire as well. A Big Ten and SEC, only one head coaching hire. A little surprising, but I think that means going in the next year, we're going to have a lot to talk about around this time. Heading into the ACC, let's start off with Wake Forest, okay? Wake Forest, they had Dave Clawson there for a while. Jake Dickert comes in. He helped out Washington State during a really rough time, got him to 3 bowl games. And Jay, here's the thing. It's going to be really tough to step into those shoes that Dave Clawson had. Not saying that Wake Forest was setting the world on fire, but there were some really competitive football teams there, and it's going to be interesting to see how Jake Digger does because he's got his hands full, at least for this first year.
Yeah, kind of a out of the frying pan into the fire situation where
Mhm.
obviously he had a tough situation at Washington State with all the turnover within the conference there at the Pac-12, and Washington State getting left behind. Not a big budget at
No.
Washington State. Wake Forest, kind of similar, is not going to be quite the budget you want to compete at the highest levels of your Power Four conference. But it is going to be interesting to see how this kind of shakes out. I don't think it's a bad hire by Wake Forest.
No.
It just doesn't jump off the page as much to me. One thing I'm looking at, though, I am glad that perhaps we're seeing the end of the slow mesh. Jake, you know how much I hate the slow mesh. I despise it, and this is my defensive line bias coming out. But I just hate the slow mesh so much. With that being said, a lot of respect for what Dave Clawson was able to do at Wake Forest. Really had some good years put together there for the Demon Deacons. And like you said, big shoes for Dick to fill.
Yeah. I will say this, though, Jay. I think that I'm not sure where their ceiling is, but I think their floor has risen. Okay. Does that make sense? This is not going to be a disaster. I think Dickert's going to put a competitive football team out there. I just do not know, what their maximum potential is going to be with this hire.
Yeah, I think this is a better fit hire than the other ACC hire that we already kind of talked about a lot last week. I don't know. We have to dive into it too much.
No, it's the one we talked about last week. Bill Belichick to North Carolina, and we already talked about it. We talked about our putting on our tinfoil hats, and this is just a fugazi to get
Steve.
Steve. I was just going to say, I forget his name. Steve Belichick. Belichick. Oh, you don't want to know what I was just thinking about there. You ever see Michael Keaton where he has the different personalities?
No, I haven't seen that.
Man, I forget what it's called. But it's Michael Keaton has like 10 personalities, and his name was Steve. And the one guy, like the one personality is just like, she did it, Steve. Run, Steve. Get out, Steve. Like, I don't know. Anyway, that's what you just reminded me of there. Anyway, so is this all a fugazi to get Steve Belichick in as head coach? Maybe. Listen, they're recruiting decently well right now. And I think as long as they recruit well, they should be fine. Good staff. They have the tools. I just don't know how Bill Belichick, the god that he is coaching, how well he is going to be relating to 18 to 22-year-olds, which I think is massively important. And also just the circus around his book. Will that be a distraction? I don't know, but
especially having never been a college football coach.
Right, because there is a difference. I mean, listen, Pete Carroll did it when Pete Carroll was younger. Okay. Jim Harbaugh does it, but if you talk to any NFL coach, they all say Jim Harbaugh was an awesome guy to play for in the NFL. Like, he related to players. I don't know if Bill ever related to any player. He was just one of those tough, hard-nosed football coaches. And I don't know if that is the college winning or recruiting formula now.
Yeah, it's a real shame that we won't get to see him just spike the challenge flag into the ground in college football.
Yeah. No, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun to watch. Jay, this next one is very close to home for me. All right. And I know people listening are also going to, I think, are interested in my thoughts here. Rich Rodriguez heads home, back where it all began in West Virginia. And Jay, I was very indifferent on this hire originally. When the prodigal son returns home, I usually don't like it. I think it almost never works out because then you start doing things, the same stuff you were doing then.
And the game changes so fast that it's hard to do the
Exactly.
same thing.
Exactly. And then you look at Rich Rodriguez at Michigan, kind of lukewarm at Arizona. And you think to yourself, well, is that what it's going to be at West Virginia? And the one thing that I'm a little bit more optimistic than I was before is what he did at Jacksonville State. Again, what's the word I'm looking for? No, I'm not mutating, adapting. He adapted Jacksonville State. Okay. He was 27-10 in 3 seasons. And I think a very impressive thing that he did is he was there for that transition to FBS. And because of that, because of those years at Jacksonville State, I think they have a shot here. They're not going to be good this year. West Virginia is not going to be a good football team this year, but I think Rich Rodriguez can do it. He's not going to catch lightning in a bottle like he did before with some of those teams. But damn, the Mountaineers, man, they need to be better. And I think Rich Rod can at least instill a hard-nosed winning culture that Mountaineer fans have been yearning for a while.
Yeah, and the other piece of it is I think West Virginia fans are really excited about it. So I think they'll approach this with a little more optimism and in turn create kind of the environment we're used to seeing in Morgantown, which can help out a little bit as well when there's a little more support behind the program. I think you have a lot of former players that are very excited about Rich Rod being back in Morgantown. So that's all stuff to consider in addition to just kind of the X's and O's of everything. Like you said, I think he has changed his approach a little bit. It's still kind of, that spread running attack. Like they do want to be physical. They want to run the ball. But again, it's tough. I'm not super high on this hire, but I think there's enough excitement around the program about this hire that Rich Rod could do some good things in Morgantown.
Yeah. Now let's head to the Pac. Okay. I'm not going to call it the Pac-12 because there aren't 12 teams anymore. There's only there's still 2 for now until 2026.
2026, I think we get to the eight football programs.
Yes. I think it used to be called the Pac-8, right?
It was the Pac-10 for a long time.
Well, yes.
That's what I remember
Pac-10
from my youth.
There may have been the Pac-8. Anyway, Jimmy Rogers goes to Wazoo, filling in for Jake Dickert. Now, Jay, you know Jimmy Rogers better than I do. I just know great head coach for the Jackrabbits, went 27-3 with a national championship. You know this hire a lot more than me, so why don't you take the lead here?
Yeah, and Jimmy Rogers obviously did some great things at South Dakota State. He stepped in for a coach that had just left, a longtime coach, coming in and trying to follow in the footsteps of Stiegelmeier, who finally got his national championship there in his last year. But you look at South Dakota State, obviously the Missouri Valley Football Conference, kind of the SEC or Big Ten of the FCS ranks, if you will. And Jimmy Rogers, very successful in his 2 years in Brookings. Obviously now makes the jump up to FBS, and this is a style of hire that I think can work for sure for Wazoo, because he has a guy that is obviously going to play a physical brand of football. You look at what South Dakota State does, and it's hard nosed. I mean, it's not completely like the A-gap power like you see from North Dakota State, but it's very similar in that it's a physical brand of football. And I think, obviously having the experience at the FCS level, you're going to get more resources at Wazoo. The schedule isn't necessarily as difficult as some of the other power conferences. Again, it's hard to consider the Pac a power conference given what they've lost. But I think Wazoo has a real chance to come in and with Jimmy Rogers be really effective. I think this is going to be similar to Rich Rod, where it's kind of like you're shifting so much as far as what you want to do offensively that it's going to be tough. to be successful right away. But I do think Jimmy Rogers has a real chance to, kind of instill that winning culture and Washington State and Pullman, and make some improvements early on. It'll be interesting to see where he is in year 2, just to see kind of what happens.
Yeah, I think it's a good hire, just because of what he did at South Dakota State. Again, maximizing recruiting and trying to get some of those, trying to find those diamonds in the rough to fill out your team. And he did a great job there, and I think it's a great fit. He knows that's where his footprint is, and we shall see. But good hire by Wazoo. Now, Jay, we're going into the American right now. And I want to start off.
The most turnover, I think, by the way.
Yes, the most turnover is in the American. And I want to start off with what I think is the absolute worst head coaching hire from this offseason. And that is Scott Frost returning to UCF. And I know why. Because, he won here before. He can, this is a good hire. We can do it again. I don't believe that. He had, again, you talk about coaches catching lightning in the bottle. He did that. And no one can take away that perfect season that he had at UCF. It was huge.
National championship season, depending on who you ask.
Yeah, depending on who you ask. Thank you. And no one can take that away from him. But, Jay, he is 16-31 in 5 years at Nebraska, where a program they will do anything for their football program. Yeah, they might not have the money that others do, but if you're at Nebraska, you should be at least making bowl games.
Yeah.
He's only had one winning season, and that was that undefeated one at UCF. He's only had one. Also, just saying, Gus Malzahn didn't do bad either when he stepped in. Now, you can attribute that to Scott. Scott Frost did a good job.
Well,
or you could say the program.
You got Josh Heupel in between there, too.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Josh Heupel was in between there as well. Yes, which Heupel did well as well. He did very well. So my other thing here is that, and Jay, you and I are not insiders. We are not insiders. I don't claim to be an insider. But
sources,
yeah. My sources. But the rumblings of what I have just seen through UCF, okay, the comments I see from people who work there, okay, Gus Malzahn, one of the first things he did when he went there was he met with the marching band people. He was Gus Malzahn is kind of like a politician. Scott Frost didn't do any of that. There are rumors in Nebraska that he just kind of phoned in his last 2 years, that he was, just not there mentally, like he shut down. If that is how the end of your tenure is going to be at Nebraska, when you are trying to fight for your life for a job, and a person
at a place that you played football at,
and you are not just losing football games, but seeming like you're just phoning it in, and also just not treating people around you very well. Not saying he's totally ignorant, but he's just kind of very cold. I don't think that's a good recipe for success. And I think this head coaching job will be an utter disaster. And I believe he will not be there in 3 years. So there is my prediction. Scott Frost will not be the head coach at UCF in 3 years. I think this is a terrible hire, and they're trying to recapture the magic. I know they're in Orlando. They're trying to recapture the magic, but it's not going to happen. This is the worst head coaching hire.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on every point. Again, it's easy to look back on that big year with rose-tinted glasses and say, Scott Frost took us 13-0 in 2017. But I think you have to look at the full body of work. And again, like you said, one winning season in his history as a head coach, and that was that 1 year in 2017. Had a losing record at UCF beforehand in 2016, where he went 6-7. Obviously, the loss in the bowl game, weigh that how you want to get that seventh loss. But then again, Nebraska was just a disaster. And you would really think that as much excitement as there was about, Scott Frost Day in Nebraska and him coming home, to not put a coherent football program together in his time there, to not once go to a bowl game, to not once break the 500 mark, feels like an indictment. And maybe he learned some things from that time at Nebraska. Maybe he's grown as a person, but it just feels like this is kind of a desperation play by Central Florida to kind of recapture some magic that they once had, and I don't see it working out well at all. Yeah. I think this is going to just kind of spiral for the Knights there in Orlando, and we'll see if they have some luck. But man, I'm like you. I think this is just a terrible decision.
Yeah, and also kind of preface, Jay, you and I are usually not hyperbolic.
No.
Like, and we're both like, this is bad.
We try to be reasoned and measured in our responses. Both of us are not on board with this at all.
No. He almost double the amount of losses at Nebraska than wins. He went 16-31. Like, it's insanity to me. But let's go from a terrible hire to, I think, what you and I think is a very good hire. K.C. Keeler is going to be the next head coach of the Temple, or is the head coach of the Temple Owls here. Here's the thing with K.C. Keeler. I just want to say, one, he's from Allentown. And for the people who do not know, Allentown is about 30, 40 minutes from Philadelphia, where Temple is. This guy has won every single place he's been. Every single one. He has won a national title with two different FCS teams, with Delaware and with Sam Houston State. He won a whole bunch of games at Division III Rowan, which is in New Jersey. And Jay, what I think is the most impressive thing that he did, Sam Houston State was really behind the eight ball when it came to recruiting, NIL, and all that stuff when they made the jump to FBS.
A lot of budget problems there.
A lot of budget problems. Exactly. And he went 9-3 in his second year. That is huge for them. Yeah. I love this hire. Temple is one of the hardest places to win in college football. It's a very, very difficult place to be in. You do not own your own stadium. You are in a kind of a recruiting hotbed with New Jersey, Philadelphia right there. But you have Penn State, Rutgers, Syracuse, and also Notre Dame does very well there as well. And also Ohio State getting those guys from New Jersey. So what I'm saying is this is a very, very difficult job, but I believe in K.C. Keeler. Give the man time. He has won every single place he's been at.
Yeah, he's won every place he's been at. Has the FCS championship for Sam Houston State, guided them through the transition to the FBS level. One thing to point out there with that transition, Sam Houston State obviously goes 3-9 their first year in FBS. It's tough. Had a lot of one-score losses. I think they were more competitive than their record shows. But then again, like you mentioned last year, wins 9 games there. Obviously, he's not the coach for the bowl game, but Sam Houston State wins their bowl game, gets that 10th win. So that's a massive season that was really engineered by K.C. Keeler. And I think, again, he's kind of going home back to where he's from in the Northeast, going to a place in Temple that, obviously not necessarily the support for the program that a lot of places have. I mean, I think it was not that long ago they were talking about killing the program off at Temple. But still going to have more of a budget to work with than he did at Sam Houston State. And I think this is a great hire. I think it's a
Mhm.
fantastic hire. Really interested to see what Casey Keeler does at Temple. I don't think he's going to be there too long. Like I do think that he's kind of approaching the end of his career, 65. But you look at the body of work for Casey Keeler. Like you said, he's won everywhere he's been. This feels like a really, really good hire by the Owls.
Mhm. Yeah, and listen, those Eagles fans, the Philadelphia Eagles fans, they don't care about college football. But man, if Temple starts winning some games, those Eagle fans are gonna. I mean, they usually don't need an excuse to get after it on a Saturday, but I think you're going to be seeing a lot more fans in that stadium who are Eagles fans who don't have a college team if Casey Keeler gives them a reason.
Yeah. Why not show up to the link on a Saturday,
Yeah, why not? Why not? Now we're going to go a little bit more down south. Blake Harrell. Blake Harrell, new head coach of East Carolina. He was the interim head coach, and they took the tag off him. The East Carolina last year was 3-4 when Harrell became the interim, and the Pirates ended up finishing 8-5. Huge win. I know bowl games are weighted differently now, but huge win against NC State. Like East Carolina win over NC State, that is massive for them. Those two teams really do not like each other. I think NC or
ECU.
I kept saying USC for some reason. ECU definitely hates NC State a lot more than NC State hates them. But I think this makes sense. I am a little worried that when the new season starts, some of that adrenaline and some of that magic isn't there like it was before to end the year. However, this one feels right to me. Guys in the locker room love him. And ECU is a great, I don't know if I want to call it a sleeping giant of college football, but it's definitely one of those teams where if they can get rolling, it's a great school. It's party school, so it's fun to go to. They have a beautiful stadium. They love to tailgate, and they can have a hostile crowd there if they want to. So I like it.
Yeah, again, like if they can get energized, this is a place that has a history of being a really solid program. They've been struggling, to really put it together. But it does feel like they're just like one kind of step away from catching lightning in a bottle. I think this is a team that can absolutely take a step forward and be one of those programs from the group of five conferences that can kind of, really improve and take a step if this hire works out. And I think you look at again, you worry about losing some of the magic from what they did as far as being able to replicate the second half season success.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this was the right decision. It seemed like the guys really rallied around him. Obviously, you worry about losing some of that moving forward, but it was, in my opinion, a good hire. We did get a comment in the chat. Just want to bring attention to that real quick. Baylor Bear asked about the Big 12. We talked about Rich Rod a little bit earlier in the episode. That was the only new hire from the Big 12. Again, we have kind of reservations about somebody going back to where they captured the magic for the first part, which again, we talked about with UCF as well in the Big 12. But that was kind of our stuff there. We're into the American now. Again, the conference with the most new hires. And we're moving on to another one. Tim Albin.
Yeah.
From Ohio, moves to Charlotte. Obviously, this is again where we talk about kind of athletic budgets. Ohio and most of the programs in the MAC aren't going to have the biggest budgets, but Tim Albin, it felt like, did a really good job at Ohio with kind of stepping into a difficult position where you're replacing a guy that had a lot of previous success in Ohio. I think you look at his track record with following up what he did previously. What was happening under Frank Solich, who did a great job in his 16 seasons at Ohio, and being able to kind of keep the momentum going, as it were. Obviously, he kind of struggles in that first year with the Bobcats going 3-9, but then rattles off 3 straight 10-win seasons. Also has a brief history at Northwestern Oklahoma State when they were in the NAIA ranks, led Northwestern Oklahoma State to a NAIA national championship. I think this is a great hire for Charlotte. They kind of tried to go with, I don't really even know what Biff Poggi was. I almost called him a culture hire.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's really accurate either. That was an interesting choice that they made. But I do think Tim Albin's going to be a better X's and O's guy and improve the 49ers in a hurry.
No, I love this hire. I love this hire. Tim Albin, again, Frank Solich coaching tree, took the reins as the head coach, went 33-19. Jay, 3 10-win seasons at Ohio. That is huge. They were dominating, or not dominating, but like they were in the MAC championship every year. They were the team to be in their division. Charlotte's going to have more money. It is going to be a tougher conference. It's going to be tough to coach there for a little bit, but Charlotte gets a huge offensive mind, a guy who knows how to build a program, a guy who has been under good, successful coaches who have built programs before. I love this hire, Tim Albin to Charlotte for the Miners.
Yep. Next one up, we have Zach Kittley at FAU, offensive coordinator with a lot of success at Texas Tech. Also had a ton of success for Western Kentucky, which is in Bowling Green, Kentucky. That's why I got that mixed up. And Houston Baptist. Maybe familiar with the name Bailey Zappi, who was a quarterback that Kittley developed. I think this is a really good hire for FAU as well. I think you're getting a young guy who's really fired up to have his first head coaching job. Obviously this may not work out because you don't know how he's going to be as a head coach. But I think you inject a lot of excitement into the program down there in Boca. I think Florida Atlantic made the right decision here in going after a young guy. You worry about the defense. This is obviously an offensive hire, high-flying offense, a lot of excitement there. But I kind of like this hire as well, and I think I'll talk about it again a little bit later.
Yeah, I like it. I don't love it just because he's green. He's green. He is a guy who, again, I think the offense is going to be great. I am more looking at the building of a program type. Our guy Baylor Bear likes the hire.
Yeah. And here it's also, you look at, some of the connections he had, obviously coming from, the Texas schools. He was a Texas Tech guy. It's a much different recruiting environment in the state of Florida. I will say that. And so you wonder how he's going to adjust to that and be able to recruit down there in South Florida in particular. But again, I think if he can figure out that aspect of it, how to relate to, maybe a different part of the country recruiting than he's used to, I do think this is going to be one that works out.
Yeah. Next up, Trey Lamb going to Tulsa, spent last year at East Tennessee State, had a pretty good year, made a name for himself at Gardner-Webb, making the playoff 2 out of 4 years. Tulsa's tough, man. That is a tough place. I do think this might give them at least some stability, which I think they desperately need right now. So I like it. I think things can stabilize that program a little bit, but again, it's just so tough that I don't know if it's going to work out.
Yeah, this is a really tough place to be a head coach, and I think Tulsa is also in a position where I don't think they had a lot of options looking at the budget and what they're able to do. Because really, I think Tulsa, when you look back to the last hiring cycle, I think they would have liked to have grabbed GJ Kinney when they got Kevin Wilson, but just didn't really have the budget for it. Obviously, GJ Kinney, if you're not familiar, is the head coach of Texas State, was a former quarterback at Tulsa. But you look at this, and it's just, I think it's a good hire because I do think Trey Lamb has a lot of potential. I just think it's so tough to win that I don't know if it's going to work out. I would like to see Tulsa do well. I think they're a fun program when they're humming. I don't know if this is still the case, but I know for a long time they were the smallest school in the FBS by enrollment, and that obviously that's makes it hard to compete too, right? That comes with its own set of challenges. But this is going to be one that I keep an eye on. Because again, he did have the success at Gardner Webb, kind of turned that program around, and then was solid last year at East Tennessee State, even though they didn't make the FCS playoffs. I think that was one of those it kind of felt like a snub, right? Like East Tennessee State had a really solid year. They had a 3-point loss to the eventual national champion, North Dakota State, and then they lose a couple games by one score to teams like Mercer, Furman, Chattanooga, that were all really solid FCS programs.
Right. Next up, Rice hires Scott Abell. Jay, I don't know a whole lot about this guy. This is the one where I don't know a whole lot about him. I just know Division III guy, and then went up to Davidson. 4 playoff appearances at Davidson, 47-28. Again, I'm not very keen on Davidson football. I believe there is still a basketball school, last time I checked. What is your read on Rice's new hire?
Yeah, so this is a really good fit, in my opinion, for a few reasons. And this is a hire that I'm actually really excited about. May not work out long term, but I think this is a great hire for Rice because you look at where he's had success, right? At Washington and Lee, obviously D3. It's a different level of football, but that's a small private school with rigorous academic standards. Davidson, another private school with academic standards. So now you end up at Rice, and that makes a lot of sense. One of the reasons that I think I'm excited about this is Scott Abell runs a spread option offense, a spread triple, really. And I think with Rice and the academic standards that you have there, I don't think it's too dissimilar from like one of the, service academies. With as far as, there's some struggles. You have to have a unique guy going to Rice. So I think having that offense, knowing that this is a guy who has familiarity with kind of the private school, smaller enrollment, smaller admission, smaller budget style of play, I think this is a perfect fit. Right. And it may not work out long term, but I think what they've done with getting Scott Abell into Rice, I think it's about as good of a fit as you can have down here in Houston. I know not everybody's excited about, the idea of a spread triple option offense coming in. But again, I think you're not going to out recruit Houston in your own city.
Yep.
You're probably not going to out recruit the Texas States, the UNTs. Like, you're not going to out recruit those places. So what you have to do is build your program around a guy that has experience with the private school kind of red tape that you have to cut through, and develop your own system to develop guys within. And I think Scott Abell is a guy that's going to be able to do that at Rice if anybody's able to do it.
Yeah. Sounds good. You've convinced me. Next up. No, this person is not from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Charles Kelly, new head coach of Jacksonville State. This guy's been around the block, been around some great cultures in college football. Paul Johnson at Georgia Tech, Nick Saban. He was also the Jacksonville State offensive coordinator in 1997. This is a first-time head coach with a lengthy resume. I'm kind of indifferent on it. I think we could potentially see it work. Don't hate it. Don't I can't necessarily say I love it. Just kind of indifferent here. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, Alabama native. I think that's, you look at the Alabama ties and how long he's coached either in the state of Alabama or at least around the state of Alabama at a place like Georgia Tech. And I think it makes sense. I think Jacksonville State's kind of in a bad way with Rich Rod leaving. Again, this is Conference USA, not a bunch of high budgets. So I think this is a hire that makes sense if it's not necessarily that exciting. Kind of a wait and see approach on this one. I see what they're trying to do. I don't know if it's going to work out, but I at least see the vision here.
Yes. And I think at least if there's a vision, there's at least you have something.
Exactly. Have something. It's not like hiring Trent Dilfer at UAB, right?
Yeah. God.
We're not talking about that, though.
We're not talking about that today. That's a story for another day. Next up, Kennesaw State, a new addition, a recently new addition to the FBS. Jerry Mack, first-time head coach, was a running back coach in the NFL. Here's what worries me, Jay. This guy was offensive coordinator at Rice when Rice was not doing well on the offensive side of the ball. Not saying that that's going to be a direct correlation. Here's the good news, though. Jerry Mack was the head coach when he was at North Carolina Central. They were 31-15. So that's at least something. Again, it was not the head coach there. It was offensive coordinator there. I don't know. Don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. And he's replacing a guy in Brian Bohannon, who was essentially Kennesaw State football, right? Brian Bohannon.
Yes, that's right.
Was the head coach whenever Kennesaw State resurrected the program or had the program for the first time. And this was kind of a messy breakup, but I think they just kind of had to fill the role somehow. Obviously, you look at the success at NC Central, which is not anything to sneeze at, I don't think. But again, it feels like kind of one of those where there weren't really a ton of options out there. And Kennesaw State kind of runs down the list, and this is what they ended up with.
Yeah. I do want to make a quick amendment there. First-time head coach in the FBS.
Yes.
Okay, so he was the head coach at NCCU. Little typo with my notes here. Yes, I do take notes, everybody. Just letting you all know, I do take notes. I'm excited about this next guy, Jay. Willie Simmons, new head coach of FIU. I like this hire. This guy was at Prairie View A&M, Florida A&M. He is 66-24 as a head coach. Now, I know it's a step up to the FBS level, and it's not going to be easy. FIU, tough place to coach, tough place to recruit, even though you're in that recruiting hotbed of Florida, but you just have so many other programs around you. So it's pretty difficult if you're kind of the smaller fish in that pond. And I think Willie Simmons can get FIU to bowl games. I truly do. Again, I understand Prairie View A&M and Florida A&M are not the same as FBS. However, he's at least had winning cultures when he's at other places. So I like this hire. I think it fits culturally. I like this for FIU.
Yeah, and Willie Simmons' run at Florida A&M really maybe doesn't get as much run as it should. I think Florida A&M is a very tough place to be successful. I think some of the stories you read about some of the things that have happened at Florida A&M, right, kind of just add to the level of success. That 12-1 season in 2023, where Florida A&M's only loss was to South Florida in a 2-score game, right, like an FBS program. Spent the last year as the running back coach at Duke. So I think you look at this hire. I think this is a good hire. I think FIU is, again, one of those programs that is a little bit limited by the resources there. I think there's 2 other programs in the Miami area that are going to be better at recruiting, and FAU and obviously in University of Miami. But this feels like a good hire. I'm interested to see what he does. I feel like he'll relate to the guys in South Florida pretty well. I think this is, one of the hires that maybe isn't talked about enough. I think this
I
is
think so.
the potential to be really, really good for FIU.
Yeah, and I don't think this is that hire is getting enough love. So definitely like the Willie Simmons hire there. Jay, this one kind of close to home here for you. Sam Houston State hires Phil Longo. Again, we talked about Casey Keeler leaving Sam Houston, helping them with that transition. Phil Longo, longtime offensive coordinator, had a few stops. Was not that great at Wisconsin. Has been decently good at other places as an offensive coordinator. Also, for our Pennsylvania listeners, because I know we have a big following in Pennsylvania. East Stroudsburg alumni. So if you're an East Stroudsburg or PSAC alum, there's a guy to root for. However, I don't think this is going to go well. Casey Keeler, I think, was holding Sam Houston together. You said this, Jay. Does not have the budget the other programs do. And I don't necessarily think it's going to be all Phil Longo's fault. I just think he's going into a bad situation at this current time.
Yeah, a lot of budget problems at Sam Houston State. They'll be playing their home games in the city of Houston this year at Shell Energy Stadium, where the Houston Dash and Dynamo play due to renovations at Bauer Stadium in Huntsville. And those renovations are occupying a lot of budget that might be used elsewhere. Right. So this is going to be a very, very, very tough turnaround. They lose a ton in the portal. Defensive coordinator Skylar Cassidy departs for North Texas, and a lot of their production on the defensive side of the ball is going with Cassidy to North Texas. So this is going to be a tough job for Longo, and I'm just not that high on the hire as well. Mm-hmm. You look at what Phil Longo has done in his very brief head coaching experience in college when he was at LaSalle, 7-14 there. Mm-hmm. And obviously he's had 20 years to kind of pick up more. He's learned from some great coaches like Mac Brown, obviously with Fickell for the past couple of years in Wisconsin, but the offenses didn't look great there.
No.
So I don't think this hire is going to work out well at all. I'm very, very much out on this hire, and maybe it's not 100% fair to Phil Longo, because I also think that you look at the situation in Sam Houston State, and I don't know that anybody would be successful here.
It's tough.
It's going to be super tough, but just not necessarily a fan of this hire.
No. Let's move on to the MAC. Okay, Maction, baby. And we're going to start with a bang here, Jay. Eddie George, new head coach. Yes, that Eddie George, everybody listening, was spending some time at Tennessee State. Listen, here's the thing with Eddie George. Eddie George going back to Ohio. Again, Ohio State legend. I think Eddie George can recruit, Jay. I think he can recruit. And I think this is a splash hire for Bowling Green. And here's the deal with Bowling Green. You don't have to be ranked every year. Go to bowl games, compete for the MAC championship every once in a while. I am leaning more towards that. I like this hire just because it's going to bring a little bit more publicity to Bowling Green, get more eyeballs on Bowling Green, and then hopefully they can take care of that in recruiting. I like it.
Yeah, I think this is a good hire overall. Eddie George, took over a Tennessee State program that wasn't in great shape following the departure of Rod Reed, and then he does get them to the FCS playoff last year in his final season at Tennessee State, 9-4 record, 6-2 in conference. I think this is a good hire, and I think it makes a ton of sense for Eddie George to fit in here. Obviously, going back to Ohio, like you mentioned, as an Ohio State legend. And there is something to be said for having a former NFL great as your head coach. So overall, I think this is a decent hire. Again, you never know with making the jump from FCS to FBS how it's going to go. Even though I think we've talked about a bunch of FCS coaches that we're high on. But I do think this is a great hire for Bowling Green.
Yeah. Moving to Ohio. Again, we talked about Tim Albin leaving Ohio. They go in-house with Brian Smith. Seems to be very well liked by the locker room. Again, but so are the majority of interim head coaches. That's because I don't think that's why most of the time, or at least more than half the time, they don't work out, because they recruit again and you can't capture that same adrenaline magic that you did before. But this guy was associate head coach at Wazoo and Hawaii. So he's been kind of second in command for a while. Offensive minded guy, could work. Don't love it, but can't say I hate it with where Ohio is right now. Again, need some stability in that program right now. And I think they're trying to bridge a gap with Brian Smith.
Yeah. Don't really have a lot to add to what you say, Jake. I think you pretty much nailed it. It's going to be a wait and see approach for me. I think a lot of times now you're trying to, especially with the MAC, trying to look to keep the roster together as much as possible, keep guys from transferring out. So makes sense to hire from within. We'll see how it turns out for Ohio.
Yep. Next up, Central Michigan. Matt Drinkle is coming in from Army, Jay. Only time as a head coach was at Kansas Wesleyan, where he went 42-17. That was in 2014 to 2018. Again, this is another one. I have no idea how this is going to work out. I'm a little worried when coaches, make that jump, especially coming from Army, where, let's face it, Jay, you don't have to kind of worry about a lot of those. You don't have to worry about a lot of issues at Army. Okay. All those guys at Army, yes, sir. You could tell them to, lick the pavement and they do it for you. So I don't know how this one's going to work out. I'm pretty skeptical on this hire, if we're being honest.
Yeah, not much to add here. Again, skeptical anytime somebody's leaving Army to go. I mean, it worked out, from Paul Johnson leaving Navy.
True.
Right. So it's not completely unheard of. But yeah, I just I don't think this one is going to turn out very well. I don't love it. I think it's just too hard to go from Army to a school that's not a service academy.
Yeah. It's going to be tough.
Too much change.
Yeah. Next up, Mike Aremovich at Ball State. Jay, he is an Indiana native, from Gary, Indiana. Did well at Butler, which is not a football school by any means. Also, a little caveat here, Jay. Nice little feel-good story for you. His longtime defensive coordinator, him and his longtime defense coordinator are childhood friends. That's the dream, Jay, isn't it? Like coaching
Nepotism,
with your boy.
Yeah.
I was gonna say coaching with your boy. You say nepotism. I say you're coaching with
potato.
Your boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Potato.
Again, I don't have a whole lot on this hire. I think culturally, I think it can work. I think if you are, coaching with one of your best friends, that it can be a little contagious. If you see your coaches having fun and getting after it, you're also going to get after it. So I do like that aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, he's an Indiana guy through and through. Born in Indiana, alma mater's Purdue. Obviously, Butler is another Indiana school. So we'll see kind of what happens here. He has some MAC experience from his time at Northern Illinois. I like this better than, going to get a guy from Army, right? Like I like this hire for Ball State better than I like Matt Drinkle at Central Michigan. So we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out.
Yep. Next up, big splash hire to start off the Mountain West, Jay. Dan Mullen to UNLV. Now, to refresh you guys' memory, if you just started watching college football last year, you might think Dan Mullen was just a broadcaster. He spent 3 years broadcasting and now returns to the sideline. Mullen is from the Urban Meyer coaching tree, has a pretty good resume, if you ask me. Built Mississippi State into a very respected program in the SEC. And even though his tenure at Florida didn't end very well, the Gators still went 34-15. Under Mullen, they had 2 top 10 finishes and had an Orange and Peach Bowl wins, finished in the top 15 3 out of his 4 years. Again, he just had that disastrous 2020. 2020 was bad, and I think the year after wasn't that great either.
2021 was the really bad year. I think 2020, if I'm not mistaken,
that was the shoe.
That was the shoe. Yeah,
that was the shoe game. Who throws a shoe?
Yeah, because even in 2020, they were in the SEC championship, right?
Yeah, so it wasn't terrible. So I guess 2021 was the bad year.
Yeah, 2021 was the bad year.
He was also doing weird stuff.
He was
doing weird stuff.
Not recruiting well.
No.
Which at Florida is kind of unacceptable. The good news is, I think things have changed a lot where you can have a lot more recruiting staff and a lot more people handling the day-to-day of recruiting at a place like UNLV, who I think has gotten a taste of success after the Barry Odom years and is hungry for more. And I think that's why you go out and you make this big splash hire and you bring in a guy like Dan Mullen. Yeah.
And, and I just want to make this clear for people who've been listening to us for – wow. Again, it's been 5 years, Jay. They might think, Jay and Jake, a little hypocritical. You guys thought Dan Mullen should have been fired at Florida. Yeah, because things were getting strange. He wasn't handling press conferences well. The team looked, totally disinterested is a very good word. And you knew he wasn't recruiting well. So if you know he wasn't recruiting well, you know what the result is probably going to be the year following and the year after that. If he's not getting along with people, again, you need to have alignment from the top down. So I think this is a great new beginning for Dan Mullen. I like the hire. Like you said, Jay, they're going to have a lot more staff. So Dan Mullen doesn't have to worry about that stuff during the season.
Because he is a good X's and O's guy, in my opinion.
He's great. Yes. So I like it, and I think it's a good transition from Barry Odom now to Dan Mullen. I think it's a good transition.
I think he can keep the momentum going there.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next Mountain West hire, one that I'm extremely high on because I think we saw, even though New Mexico didn't have a fantastic year, they had a fantastic year by New Mexico standards, given what that program has been through. As far as just not having any measure of success. Bronco Mendenhall coming home to Utah. Obviously a rich history at BYU when he was a coach there, and now he's in Utah State. This feels like such a natural hire. Selfishly, I wanted Mendenhall to stay at New Mexico a little bit longer just to see what could happen. But this makes a ton of sense for a Utah State program that's kind of been struggling to find its identity again after a few good years. I think this is maybe one of my favorite hires of the offseason. We'll kind of dive into that with the list.
Yeah. I think it's an almost perfect hire. He knows the blueprint, or he knows the footprint of Utah. He's coached there before. Went 99-43 at BYU. Okay, yeah, Virginia didn't work out very well. Very extremely average at best. But Bronco Mendenhall knows the state of Utah. He knows those people up there. I absolutely love this hire, and I think listen, New Mexico was a doormat in the Mountain West, and he made them respectable. I'm very excited to see what Utah State's going to do. Very excited.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of the better teams in the Mountain West this year, and then in the Pac-12 or Pac insert number here moving forward. Moving on to Fresno State. Obviously, strange situation in Fresno. Jeff Tedford started the season, but never actually coached a game in 2024. Due to health issues, stepping down. You had Tim Skipper, who was the interim coach, and now Matt Entz is the hire at Fresno State. Matt Entz was at North Dakota State for a long time as the head coach. Had a lot of success there, won 2 national championships, spent last year as the running backs coach at USC, and is now back as a head coach at Fresno State. This feels like a really good hire. This one feels like a really good hire as well. Anybody that has had as much success as he has had, and obviously you look at what he did at North Dakota State, where it's NCAA Division I FCS championship, lost in the quarterfinal, FCS championship, lost in the championship, lost in the semi. Like, that is a tradition of winning, and it'll make a lot of sense for Matt Entz to be the head coach at Fresno State, where they kind of have to look to bounce back from a tough year.
Yeah, and I'm comparing this kind of to the Jimmy Rogers hire, just because South Dakota State, North Dakota State have been dominating FCS. Here's the thing. Matt Entz was there a lot longer than Jimmy Rogers was at South Dakota State. Like, Matt Entz, he was 60-11 at North Dakota State, just put out there a dominating football team, every season. They were always in it. I think this is a huge move for Fresno State, who has been a kind of a giant killer, or is kind of known to be a giant killer, but has kind of cooled off a little bit. But no, I really like this hire for Matt Entz and for the Valley.
Yep. And then our final Mountain West hire, Jason Eck, the former Idaho coach, heads to New Mexico. I think he had a lot of success at Idaho. Former offensive lineman from Wisconsin. I believe he played under Barry Alvarez there.
Yes, he did.
So going to have, I think most guys that either played under or coached under Barry Alvarez have a certain kind of identity of what they want to do. Football, think about Brett Bielema. It's going to be a physical team, or that's what he's going to try to instill at New Mexico. Again, very, very tough place to coach. I think this is a good hire for New Mexico. I just don't know how much you can eke out of that program.
Culturally, I love it. They're going to die for, they'll die, or his locker room would die for him. Like, he is animated. His players love him. Fun. Just looks like his players were having a lot of fun at Idaho. It's just going to be tough, man. New Mexico is such a tough place to coach in. Again, they do not have that history at all. But with some teams leaving the Mountain West soon, maybe that might be their chance to make a little run.
Yeah, we will certainly see. Moving on to the Sun Belt, Dowell Logans. I don't know if I'm saying that name right. It might be Logans, but
Logans.
Yeah, Dowell Logans, the new head coach at Appalachian State, who uncharacteristically has struggled. Maybe we're just so used to seeing App State as one of the better programs in the Sun Belt that it was kind of weird to see them struggle. But now Logans steps in as the head coach at Appalachian State. Spent the early part of his coaching career in the NFL, kind of bounced around with the Titans, Browns, Bears. For the last 2 years, he's been the offensive coordinator at South Carolina, which, to be fair, feels like that South Carolina offense has improved. At least they improved in 2024. 2023 was a little bit tough, but yeah, this is, you're kind of getting a guy who has been in the region for a little bit. Don't know how much we'll see out of this hire at App State. I mean, this is, again, just kind of feels like like there's nothing that really jumps out and says this hire makes sense, but there's also nothing that says, oh, this is a bad hire. I think I'm going to take the wait and see approach on this one as well.
Yeah. I don't like it. I'm leaning towards don't like. Offensive minded guy, which I think is important, was under Mike Munchak and Adam Gase in the NFL. Here's the problem. He didn't seem like he was a good offensive coordinator in the NFL. Wasn't a great offensive coordinator in the NFL. Hasn't been a head coach before. And dare I say, even at South Carolina, I think he was kind of bailed out by Lenore Sellers when he was there.
Yeah.
So I don't like this hire, and I think this is a very weird territory for App State where they have been giant killers. They have been in the forefront of the Sun Belt. And now they're looking like they're in the middle of a rebuild because a lot of their coaches were bolting other places, which, climbing the coaching ladder. Don't love this hire. And I think App State after this is going to have to look within and say, okay, how are we going to keep coaches here?
Yeah. And I agree with you. So we'll see how this one turns out. Moving on to Marshall, Tony Gibson steps in for Charles Huff, who departed for Southern Miss, which we'll talk about after this.
Mm-hmm.
This one just kind of feels like a little bit of trying to find somebody who's going to stick around.
Yep. That's exactly what this is.
And Tony Gibson, West Virginia native.
Yeah.
Not really much to add on. Has never been a head coach before, or at least at the FBS level. He does have, some good defenses statistically at NC State. I think he had some good defenses there. Was a defensive coordinator at West Virginia at one point as well.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of ties to the state. But again, this feels like just trying to find somebody who's going to stick around.
Yeah. I feel like that's the same thing here. This guy won't leave us. And Jay, those West Virginia roots, man, they run deep.
They do.
If you live in West Virginia, you love the state of West Virginia, whether you are a part of the Thundering Herd or a Mountaineer, that you will do anything for your schools. And I feel like that's what it was. I don't mind Tony Gibson. I think he's a good defensive coordinator. Defensive minded coaches, though, sometimes scare me as head coaches, though.
Yeah.
And this, I think Marshall panicked and just said, we're going to get this guy because he's not going to leave, and he will stay. And I don't think sometimes that's not the best way to go about it.
No. But moving on to the second part of that equation, obviously Gibson filling the void left by Charles Huff, who departed for Southern Miss. Great hire in my mind.
Yep.
To pull Charles Huff away. Southern Miss is another program that has been looking for stability for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like they haven't been able to really put anything together down there in Hattiesburg. And you look at what Charles Huff has done with Marshall, winning the Sun Belt last year, going and beating Notre Dame in 2022, pulling off that upset. This feels like a fantastic hire for Southern Miss.
Yeah, I love the hire. Charles Huff, follower of the program. Yes, Charles Huff does follow us. So
we have a little bit of bias here, I guess.
we have a little bit of bias with Charles Huff, but no, I think it's a great hire. Listen, him and the Marshall brass could not agree. So he went to the Sun Belt where he's going to make a little bit of money. Or sorry, he went to Southern Miss. Sorry, still the Sun Belt. Went down to Southern Miss where they're kind of starting to throw some money around.
Yeah. Hopefully none of that appropriated for Southern Miss football by Brett Favre.
Yes. Hopefully not.
Had to get my shot off there.
Of course. Listen, here's the thing with Charles Huff. He had a 9-win and a 10-win season at Marshall, 3 bowl games, Sun Belt championship. And I think Charles Huff was like, I need an extension. And Marshall was like, well, no. And he's like, well, what are you talking about? He's like, I could go into the pool right now and get that. Marshall called his bluff and he left. And then when he left, a bunch of players opted out of the bowl game, where they had to cancel the bowl. So that just shows you how much those players like Charles Huff. I think it's going to be tough initially, but I really believe he can stabilize Southern Miss. Because, Jay, when you and I were young, Southern Miss wasn't bad.
Yeah, and Larry Fedora had a strong year there at Southern Miss. Mm-hmm. I think actually upset Houston's under Kevin Sumlin.
Yeah,
upset Houston's bid to make a BCS bowl.
Right.
If I don't have that mistaken. So yeah, definitely some good years for Southern Miss football. Looking to kind of get back to that.
No, absolutely. And Yeah, beautiful. They have a nice stadium too. So I really, excuse me, I believe this will work. Lastly, Independent. Oh, I hope I don't butcher this. I'm terrible with names. Joe Harasmiak is at UMass, former defensive coordinator at Rutgers, where they're actually pretty good. Was also the head coach of Maine. So again, that footprint a little bit. Led the Black Bears to a semifinal in his third year. I'm surprised UMass went with another defensive coach after Don Brown did so poorly. Yeah.
I am and I'm not. I think obviously you look at this. Joe, and I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. I'm just going to go with Coach Joe. Is a little bit younger than Don Brown.
Okay.
So I definitely get like getting scared off of the defensive head coach. But I think it makes sense to have Joe in here. You look at what UMass has coming up to. Obviously, it's their first year in the MAC. Going to be making that adjustment. I don't think it's a bad hire. Again, he took Maine to the FCS semis in 2018 when he was the head coach there. Had some really good defenses at Rutgers. Was also a DC or co-DC at Minnesota for a time. So I think you know what to expect here. I also think you look at it and like with UMass, this is a program where you're just going to have to keep people in games, right? Like you're going to have to stick around. UMass is never going to be like that power program. But having a guy who's been in the Northeast, who kind of knows the area, has had success coaching at another place in Maine, and then obviously has the defensive credentials. I think it's a solid hire, not a great hire, but a solid hire.
Yeah, I'm lukewarm. I'm not saying it's bad, not necessarily saying it's good. So there you go. And again, us at the Get It Back Coach, we cover all FBS and also FCS football. Obviously, focus a little bit more FBS, FCS. That's where Jay comes in, helps me out there. We cover every single new head coaching hire. Now, Jay, it is time to give our top 5 top head coaching hires. Now, I did write a blog about this, and you know what, Jay? I'm switching the order. Here. I'm going to start with my number 5. I like Dan Mullen at UNLV. I think he is the right coach to kind of catch the momentum, and he's going to have a lot more help with his staff for the recruiting side of things, which is why he was kind of pushed out at Florida. Hopefully he stops doing weird stuff like dressing up as Darth Vader and things.
Well, I thought Darth Vader was Drinkwitz.
No, I think Mullen. I think Mullen dressed up like
and then
Darth
Drinkwitz
Vader,
made fun of it,
and then Drinkwitz made fun of him with
he did the breathing.
Yeah, so I got Dan Mullen at 5.
Yeah, I got Scott Abell at 5 at Rice. I think just from a standpoint of perfect fit and recognizing your limitations, I don't think Rice could have done a better job. Will it work out? I don't know, but I think this was a perfect fit, perfect hire situation for Rice.
And that's kind of what I'm looking at it here. I'm not looking at it with who has the best chances of working out, because I think sometimes the program isn't that stable. I just think did they get the best guy type of stuff. And number 4, this one might be controversial. I am going with Rich Rodriguez to WVU. I know I was lukewarm on this before, but man, there is a buzz in West Virginia that I haven't seen in a while, probably since the last Holgorsen year. They're not going to be good out of the gate. So don't be clipping this and being like, hey, Myers, like West Virginia is 3-9. You said this is a good hire. It could still be a very good hire. I believe, and just because of what Rich Rod did with Jacksonville State, I think Rich Rod can do it again. Maybe not on that rocket ship, but I think they can get the program rolling again.
Yeah. So number 4 for me, I have Charles Huff, Southern Miss. We've talked about it. I think it was a no-brainer hire that if Southern Miss was able to pull this off, they needed to get him. I think he steps in and makes Southern Miss competitive in the Sun Belt right away.
Charles Huff should have been my 5th. I should have kicked Dan Mullen out. But all right, I got to live with it now. Okay, number 3, Casey Keeler. I love this hire. I know Temple is very difficult to win at, so I don't necessarily know if this is going to flourish or if this is going to be a take that will make me look great. But man, I love this Casey Keeler hire. The man has won every single place he's been in. I know he's old. Temple needs something. I love the Casey Keeler hire and at Temple.
Yeah. So number 3, I'm going with a guy that we haven't talked about on this list. And that's because he's in the FCS ranks. I'm going with Brennan Marion at Sacramento State. I think this was a fantastic hire by a program that's looking to make the jump up to FBS if possible. You look at what Brennan Marion's offense is. It's unique. It's exciting. Guys want to play in it. You also look at the fact that Brennan Marion's recruiting pretty dang well in the FCS ranks too.
He is. They are on a recruiting tear right now. Sac State is.
Which is wild to think about with Sacramento State. And, even though we didn't talk about the FCS coaching hires in this go around, I think it's probably one of the best hires of the offseason with Sacramento State pulling Brennan Marion away from the FBS ranks to be their head coach.
Without a doubt.
How long is he there? I don't know, because I think he's going to come in, win right away, and work his way up. But this was a great hire by Sacramento State.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely love it. Number 2 for me, Bronco Mendenhall. I love the Bronco Mendenhall hire. I think it is, the guy knows the area. He's won there before at BYU. I think it's a fantastic hire. I absolutely love it, and I know you do too.
Yeah. I'm going to save that thought. But Jimmy Rogers, number 2, the South Dakota State former head coach. Wazoo was just in a tough spot, and I think they knocked it out of the park with their hire. Obviously, we never know with somebody going from FCS to FBS, but the guy's a winner. He knows how to build a winning culture. He knows how to install a physical presence in a team, and I think he's going to do really well at Wazoo, especially, working under the budget constraints that they have compared to other programs they'll be playing against.
Yep. So my number 1, and Jay, this might be crazy, but I don't know. Maybe it's because where I'm located, but I have Tim Albin to Charlotte. I think that is the best head coaching hire of the offseason. Again, Tim Albin did wonders at Ohio, was a part of other coaching staffs where they built great culture on his own at Ohio. I think this is huge for Charlotte. Charlotte needs something because I feel like Charlotte right now is just a lame duck program. I use that term a lot, lame duck, but I feel like they're just kind of there. And I think this can get excitement there. And it's an offensive minded coach that I think is really going to turn things up. I love the Tim Albin hire. That is my number 1.
Yeah. So number 5, I talked about it with the fit and how good Scott Abell was at Rice as far as fitting what they needed. Bronco Mendenhall is my number 1 choice for similar reasons. Knowing Utah, having been successful just about everywhere he's been, I think this was a no-brainer hire for Utah State to be able to pull him away from New Mexico State. Bronco Mendenhall back in the Beehive State in Utah. I think this is going to be a program that's going to be a problem for as long as Mendenhall's there.
Absolutely love it. Well, there we go. Top 5 done and out of the way. Jay, remind the people about what season it is, because it is Send Jay away season. So let the people know what's going on with that. Right?
Yeah, for the 4th year in a row, I'm letting people vote on me and my fall travels, if you will, on what game that I'm going to. Obviously, the Sweet 16 is going on right now, so 16 matchups, voting happening. I'm going to close the polls Wednesday night. But for now, you can vote on these matchups to see who makes it to the next round. Illinois at Indiana or Northern Iowa at Utah Tech. New Hampshire at Dartmouth or Arkansas at Memphis. Sul Ross State at Western Oregon or Iowa at Rutgers. Washington at Washington State, the Apple Cup, or Indiana State at Montana. Western Colorado at Adams State or ULM at UTEP in the Sun Bowl. Obviously a bucket list venue for both of us, I think. Syracuse at Clemson or Drake at South Dakota. Going to the PSAC, Gannon at Kutztown.
Woo! Hey, vote Jay. Get Jay to Kutztown, everybody. Get Jay to Kutztown.
We have a few people that want to see me end up in Kutztown at the end of this. And that game's up against Butler at Weber State. By the way, underrated venue there for Weber State. They've got a really good view. UTSA at Colorado State, which is a fun group of 5 matchup, or Cal at San Diego State. And those are the Sweet 16 matchups. Again, voting closes on Wednesday night. So if you want to get those votes in, find the link. I'll repost them here shortly on Twitter and Blue Sky. But other than that, that's the votes for now. We'll have the Elite 8 will just be one link to vote because there will only be 4 matchups to vote on. And I'll post that probably either Thursday or Friday.
Okay. Now, Jay, I have one last thing to discuss. For the people in here who have played college football, the college football video game for many, many years, College Football 26 came out today or yesterday, depending on when you're listening to this. And my initial thoughts, one, looks better, feels smoother. You do not have a continuous drum loop. You have all the fight songs play randomly, mixed in with like other popular songs too by marching bands. So Shabuzi Tipsy is one of them. Blinding Lights by The Weeknd is one, with some others in there. So one, it sounds better. It looks better. The trophy cases are back. You can get to actually see what trophies you have won. I'm hoping that they duplicate so you can have like 4 Big Ten championships or 3 Lombardi withers, stuff like that. You can actually see who won them. The rivalry trophies in the trophy cases as well. Haven't done anything with Road to Glory. Started my dynasty. A lot more head coaching options, at least with equipment and with how your coach looks. If you want to wear jean shorts as a head coach, then you can do that in the game. Delaware and Southeast Missouri State are in the game too. By the way, I started as the D coordinator at Delaware.
Is it Southeast Missouri State or is it Missouri State? It's Missouri State, right?
It's Missouri State. Sorry, my fault. Yes, it's Missouri State. Simu's not there yet. The only thing I'm having an issue with, and I hope they fix it, there is a bug. Sometimes your quarterback will not snap the ball, which is a problem. I had like four delay of game penalties the first time I played.
Well, it happens.
It'll happen. But I'm very
in real life.
Sometimes that happens in real life. Yeah. So initial thoughts. I love it. And as soon as this is edited and uploaded, I will be playing that until my eyes bleed.
There you go.
Jay, anything else for the people?
Yeah, I mean, I plan to get the game myself at some point. Maybe we can run it back. I never really figured out how to get good at the game. But no, I mean, it's super excited about that. Obviously, having the fight songs in the game makes a world of difference. Really kind of brings back that nostalgic flair. But now I think it's time to land the plane, Jake. So once again, thank you to all the listeners. We appreciate everything you do to help us grow. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to like. Really glad to be part of the Apollo Network. I mean, it's great. Just to see all the work everybody else does, Kenny and Justin and those guys with the wrestling stuff. You know, I have my NASCAR content on over here. All of the stuff they do with the Astros. If you're in Houston, obviously, if you're not in Houston, maybe you don't like it as much. But we don't have to talk about that. find us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you listen, and give us those 5-star reviews to help us grow. Spread the word. If you're a sponsor looking to possibly get on board, obviously reach out to us. We're happy to talk business, as it were. And Jake, it's just great to be doing this again. We know college football's almost here. I do want to close out with just a reminder: if you're able to help out the Central Texas community with the Kerr County Flood Relief Fund, be sure to do that. Once again, we appreciate all